and Dragon.
So there you go. We should be up and running. And there's me in the corner. Hello, me. And there's you. Very good. Hello, you. Today is the first in what we're basically calling our upgrade required Geek and Dragon episodes, right?
Yeah, sort of themed episodes of our general purpose show.
Yes, our general, very, very random Geek and Dragon episodes. So what we want to do really basically is touch on some of the technologies that we would like to explore or that we are exploring for the Upgrade Required documentary, and just give people a little entry into the kind of stuff that we're hoping to experiment with. Hopefully some hands-on stuff in there as well. I should probably just say that for those who don't know, for those who haven't heard me pitching this thing, Upgrade Required is really, in essence, a film about a future where disabilities are rendered obsolete through technology. So we're looking for technologies that are out there that can basically create a better human, right? Is that a safe way of saying?
Sure.
Yeah, and of course, Q is our subject. So Q's the guinea pig. Q's the one who'll be flailing around the lab with some kind of robotic legs on. Although I'll probably be doing that first, I imagine. But this TED Talk really sort of hit home for me, especially given the things that you've been saying about enhancing the human form as opposed to just making it work.
Yeah, well, for those who haven't seen, I recommend pause this and go watch it if you haven't.
I will put a link up at this point, letting everyone know where to go and have a look.
We are built out of very small stuff, and we are embedded in a very large cosmos. And the fact is that we are not very good at understanding reality at either of those scales, and that's because our brains haven't evolved to understand the world at that scale.
The gist of it is basically a guy who's been doing experimentation with sensory replacement, where basically if someone is deaf or blind or what have you, they take the input, so a microphone or a camera, and translate that into something they can perceive. So sound if they're blind, vibration if they're deaf, that sort of thing. And then in that way, you're sort of able to almost replace one sense with another. And then from there, he talks about adding senses.
Well, yeah, the thing that they discovered, which to me was like mind-blowing, if you may pardon the pun, was that the brain was such a general purpose computer that it basically all it does is look for patterns. And by feeding, it doesn't matter where it gets its information from. I mean, to the brain is just in a giant dark puddle, and it just processes this data that comes in, so it doesn't care where it gets it from. So the brain, instead of learning how to understand this data, which you'd think like, oh my God, how you got to learn a whole new input system, the reality is the brain is really sort of intuiting this stuff out of what's being fed in.
I don't want to get too technical here, but PH stands for potato head, and I use this name to emphasize that all these sensors that we know and love, like our eyes and our ears and our fingertips, these are merely peripheral plug-and-play devices. You stick them in and you're good to go. The brain figures out what to do with the data that comes in.
The one sort of concrete example that person worked on, his team, it was a vest for a deaf person that basically turned sound into a pattern of vibration on the vest because it was covered in motors.
So we had Jonathan train with the vest for 4 days, 2 hours a day, and here he is on the 5th day.
You.
So Scott says a word, Jonathan feels it on the vest, and he writes it on the board.
Where?
Jonathan's able to translate this complicated pattern of vibrations into an understanding of what's being said.
And then, because the interesting thing is, they put that vest on people who could hear and then put in different kinds of inputs.
Yeah, I like their stock market thing.
Yeah, so yeah, one game was basically a person got a pattern of vibration and they were asked to make like a choice between two colors,
Yeah.
and they had no idea what it meant. But if they picked a wrong thing, they were notified.
Yeah.
And so eventually, they were trying to see, could this pattern of vibration based on this information be processed by the brain in sort of an intuitive way.
Hmm. And basically buy and sell stocks is what it ended up being
Yeah.
about, which I thought was, of course, rather crass, but kind of interesting. The thing that really resonated with me was something you'd spoken about ages ago, like when we first met, where I was like, "Oh, look, they have these legs that'll allow you to walk," and you were like, "Well, but I don't. Why are people obsessed with making me human? Human isn't enough anymore. I want to augment my human form, and if we've got these robotic legs, why can't they do better than human?"
Yeah.
Which is interesting because I think people, people who don't have disabilities, I think are very, I guess they're nervous about it. They're nervous about saying that it could be better than human. There's, or maybe there's some kind of like fundamentalist, religious aspect to it or something where you're not supposed to be better than, this is what we were given, we should be happy with it, as opposed to trying to augment it. I'm not sure where that comes from exactly.
Yeah.
Um, but this guy's basically saying that with this general purpose computing system that we have, which is also, I got to say, which is very similar to what the guy who wrote this book on intelligence said. He said, like, look, the form of the brain, the very physical form of the brain, shows that it's the same thing over and over again. Like it has there's a repetition to its form that indicates it does something over and over and over again. And I think I can't remember whether he actually suggested it or it was someone else who was saying that what if it's just pattern recognition? Like that, what if we are literally just about processing patterns?
I mean, for the most part, that is all we do.
Well, yeah, we don't see anything. All we
Yeah.
get is the signals from our eyes or the signals from our ears and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I'm interested to see because it seems like in the TED Talk, the main input device
Mm.
was the vest,
Yes.
and they were plugging in different information. So I'd be interesting to see what other types of like physical devices they could come up with.
I think another very clever thing I thought he did was when he had it pulling tweets,
Yeah.
so he could sense a plus or minus,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, they did a sentiment analysis
mm.
on the TED Talk hashtag while he was talking.
Well, but think about that from like from a political standpoint. So you got a politician standing up there and they're talking. You can literally, in real time, gauge the feelings of the population and potentially in real time change your message.
Yeah,
I felt there were a lot of different sort of applications that could be used towards that. And his spectrum, the way he talked about the spectrum, what a tiny part of the spectrum of light we actually perceive.
hmm
Like we consider ourselves either with sight or without sight. The reality is, even with sight, we're blind to the large proportion of light waves out there.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, imagine like how different would your world be if you could see that?
It would be crazy.
But I liked the way this. First off, I loved the way this guy presented it.
Yeah, the moment where he rips off the shirt and he's wearing the vest, that was pretty. I don't know. That was very amusing to me.
And I'm wearing the vest right now. So as I'm speaking, the sound is getting translated into dynamic patterns of vibration. I'm feeling the sonic world around me.
It was very showmanship. Like I think
Yeah.
a lot of these things do come down to that though. I mean, there's a theatricality, I guess, to these presentations. There are some people who come in with very, very interesting stuff and just the dullest of voices and presentations. And there are other people like him who really, I think, well, first off, you pick up on that passion. You pick up on the fact that he's really excited about this stuff. And I think he sees the future in this stuff. I do think there's definitely, I mean, once you open up the idea of a brain as just a general processing unit, it changes everything.
I think we should definitely try and get an interview with him for the documentary.
I'd love to. Yeah, yeah. I would. We should definitely follow up with him and his guys, because it's yeah. Their stuff is amazing. That stuff with the guy who'd never heard anything in his life, being able
Oh,
to
yeah,
write
I
down the
think, yeah,
words.
write down the words, yeah, because of the
Um,
rest.
yeah,
That
because
was,
and logically you'd think, well, it must take forever to learn this
mhm,
feeling is the word so and so, or this is, and I was sort of very sort of heartened to hear that it wasn't about that. It wasn't about learning anything. It was just about letting your brain have time
yeah,
to process it.
exactly.
And it's something we forget. I mean, I think there's we think that we're seeing the world, and that's the way the world is. The fact that he's questioning that and, well, forcing us to question that is really kind of exciting to me. And of course, as a science fiction nerd, I suddenly started going, oh my god, there's all these great ideas you could do with that.
You know what I would love?
Hmm.
All right, let's do something fun. Like, let's say you're using a vest or some kind of vibration feedback.
Hmm.
What would you, what would your input be?
I probably want to know where my child was at all times. If my child is in any potential danger, I could be alerted to that, or maybe
So basically, you would have remote Spidey sense.
yes, well, that's it. You are exactly. You're building a Spidey sense. I would call it like a Sebastian sense because I'd be tracking my child. I'd be in a creepy way tracking my child's every movement. But that's it. You are enabling. You're creating other senses. I mean,
Hmm.
you're literally. If you're, are you still seeing? If you're seeing an X-ray, are you still, or is that called something else? Is that
Yeah.
a new thing? What about
Or
you? What would you do
can you guess?
if you could? I don't know. There's too many. You've got too many things going on. I can't do.
That's true.
You know what? I
I,
should have
I,
senses just to find out what it is that you're into today.
yeah, I would want sensors all over my kitchen.
Huh.
Temperature, pressure, humidity, like in the pots, on the stove, in the sink.
Hmm.
And then if something's cooking, it like tingles my back
To
when
say
like things are getting
your toast
to
is burning.
temperature. Yeah.
Huh. Well, I'd be curious to know how complex the technology is required for this. It didn't look that crazy. I mean,
No, it didn't.
there's a lot of
And
data processing.
something that I would be interested in asking him, or if he would ever explore this in the future. So, the idea is that the inputs to the brain are flexible and potentially able to expand.
Hmm.
Could you expand the output?
Hmm.
So imagine this. Imagine I have feedback sensors on my arm,
Hmm.
and I'm controlling a robot arm.
Right.
And so when the robot arm hits something or touches something, I get feedback.
Right. Which they're
But
doing.
yes, but what if you double the sensors and then I get feedback from two arms to my one?
Huh.
And
I wonder how you'd
basically,
process that though. Like, would you?
exactly. But like, imagine if there are two sensors really close to each other, like let's say two on the palm,
Hmm.
and I know one slightly to the left is feedback from the first, and left is slightly to the right.
Hmm.
And so I can tell, okay, one hand is full, both are full, none are full.
Hmm. So basically, it would be what you would be creating. What it would the sensation of having extra limbs.
Yes.
And then you would just process that by sort of adding on. I mean, it really is. It's like we
But
become
then
the
the question
breadboard.
is, if you got used to the feedback of extra limbs, could you control both separately?
Hmm.
Imagine, like, if I had feedback and sensors on both arms, but
Hmm.
I could control four
Yeah.
independently.
Boy, I would. That would make me 4 times the klutz that I am now. I would be. I do 4 times the damage.
Like, I wonder if the inputs are expandable or the outputs.
Hmm. We should be able to process stuff like that. We should be able to process entire, as you say, like platoons of censored robots type thing.
In monkeys, they've trained them because they basically put a brain implant
Hmm.
into the monkey, and they trained it to move a robot arm without moving its own arm.
Yes.
So right there, that means I could think move an arm. My arm doesn't actually move, but the robot arm does. That's 2 arms that you could control simultaneously. Okay, but then could I do 3?
Right. Let's get 2 working first, and then.
But I'm saying, like, what are the limits?
Yeah. No, that's it.
If,
And then.
if you can move 2 arms in different ways and move your legs, how many limbs could you control simultaneously?
And then what would happen if you couldn't? What does your brain do if it can't process all that information? You know what I mean? Great. So you just drive someone crazy. It's like the brain of Morbius. It's like that Doctor Who episode where there was just the brain slowly putting itself together with bits and pieces of space travelers that have crashed on the planet. You're not a Doctor Who fan. I think we need a lab. Like we need like a physical location to hold this all together. And the other reason why I'd love to do a lab is that I'd love to set up a place where we have the wireless connection necessary for you to have a telepresence robot that we can attach an arm to, that we can, you know what I mean, that we can. So part of the documentary becomes about creating a lab that you can be more of a part of as well. So again, it's why I feel like this isn't just a documentary.
Although if we do figure out how to do a telepresence robot with the arms, we should also ship one back to me here.
So you can have one roaming around the house as well.
Exactly.
For me on that stuff, it's just dexterity. There's such a limited dexterity right now in this stuff.
Well, I mean, again, some of the prosthetic arms seem pretty good.
Well, that's it. I'm feeling like if we could somehow, weld a couple of those things onto a telepresence robot, you would be well served with a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
Or what about the exosuit? Like if you could have some arms, would arms be useful to you at all from actually connected?
To me, like I
Less so.
said, the ideal is a full body exoskeleton with also external arms. So for like sort of the fine motor skills that I'm not strong enough to do, like drawing, writing, that kind of stuff, that would be very useful. Maybe some cooking or small tasks like that. And then again, when it's more than that, I switch over to the external arms.
You need the
Yeah,
Dr.
exactly.
Octopus setup.
Again, with my idea, the question is, could I use my regular arms?
Oh no, I see where you're going with it.
Sure.
People should definitely please go and see the video, and obviously subscribe to us so that you can get more of this stuff. And we'll be back with another one of these as soon as we can.
Oh,
to get
also,
back to.
answer the question.
Yes.
Let's just go with the vest. Like, so it's a vest, and there's little vibrating motors all over the vest that can create patterns. So what kind of input information would you want?
Yes. What would be your extra Spidey sense, and how would you use
exactly.
it? That's good. Very good.
Yeah.
Clear, concise, to the point, as always, Q. So I guess until we Geek and Dragon again, it's cheerio.
Hopefully it's recorded.
That's it. As usual, let's go to the tape.
And Dragon.